Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Faster Masters Rowing Radio, where having a rowing coach only makes you better. Following a program gives you a true pathway to becoming a confident sculler who's respected by your peers. You can become the athlete you want to row with. I'm Rebecca Caro, and as ever, I am joined by Marlene Royal. Hey, Marlene.
Hi, Rebecca. Hello, everybody.
So today it is time zone change day because Canada just switched. Is that right?
Yes.
And that means I have yet again continued my 100% success record of getting the time wrong. So for people who normally watch at 6 o'clock in US Eastern time, it's now 5 o'clock. And yes, this is not the time you are expecting. But I got it wrong, and I have a great track record of getting it wrong always. Like one year I discovered that there is a different date for changing the time to summer and winter time in the US in different states. I didn't realize that that happens. And, you know, as usual, I had arranged something at that exact time. So next week, we're going to go back to the usual 6 p.m. Eastern time. Is that right, Marlene?
Yes, correct. Yes.
So
and we'll try to keep it straight. In Canada, some provinces don't go on daylight savings time. And here's a funny thing. If you go to the head of the hooch and you race, the head of the hooch is right on a time zone change. And it's usually the weekend that the time zone changes. So you might be staying in a hotel that is in one time zone and racing on the course, which is another time zone, and they might change on different days. So talk about...
That's confusing. That's confusing. So Cece has said, yay, her meeting moved up an hour, but so did the podcast, so she can join us.
Great.
Hey, that's great. And I'm obviously, you know, delighted that your meeting moved, but also we moved, but also I got it wrong, but you're here. So, hey, hooray to everybody. And
exactly.
There are
exactly.
We've got lots of live watchers this week. So hi. And remember, the benefit to you of being a live watcher is you can write comments below where you're watching the live stream. So you may be in Facebook, you may be in YouTube. And if you make a comment, we can see it and we can bring it up live on screen. Now, the sponsors for the month of November for the Rowing Chat Network, the first one is a new rowing retailer directory. Have you ever wondered how many different rowing shoe suppliers there are out there, or where to find really innovative rowing gifts for the holidays? We're announcing the Rowing Retailer Directory. Compiled into 16 different categories, from oars to ergs, from repairs to photographers, you're guaranteed to find what you're looking for. Go to rowing.chat/retailer and browse around. And if you're a rowing retailer and want to add your business, please get in touch and we'd be happy to facilitate that. You can also search by country. So if you're looking for a local supplier of a global product, brand, that's also possible because obviously not everybody ships globally. And our second sponsor is from me, the Rowing Tales Book 2020. I'm publishing my collection of rowing stories in time for Christmas. Rowing Tales 2020. This book is the fourth version that I've done. I've done one a year since 2017. It contains anecdotes which will make you laugh and others which you'll definitely hope never happen to you. And this will be your fun bedtime reading, I guarantee it. Rowing Tales can be bought on Amazon and from obviously all good bookshops. And you can pre-order the 2020 edition with a discount by sending me an email, rebecca@caro.com. And when it's ready for purchase, I will send you a coupon code which you can use. But in the meantime, if you haven't yet got last year's and the year before's editions, please be my guest. Now we have a couple of comments here from someone is watching from the beautiful Occoquan in Virginia. And that must be a river. is it?
It's a reservoir and a very beautiful place to row, not far from Washington, D.C.
Cool. Welcome. Hey, good to see you. Now we're giving some advance notice now of November the 24th. Marlene and I are preparing a really big topic, which is transitioning to winter for everyone who listens in the Northern Hemisphere. It's huge. There are so many things that you can do right for yourself, and there are so many things that can be mismanaged. And obviously, we want to help all of our Faster Masters listeners avoid this. It's going to be a podcast with a live video feed, just like normal, but it has one big difference. You will only be able to see this if you are subscribed to our newsletter. We are keeping this private as a special gift to our newsletter subscribers. You can get on the newsletter by going to fastermastersrowing.com/newsletter. And if you're on the mailing list ahead of probably the 23rd of November, when we will send out the link, and the link will be private. So you won't be able to see this episode. So for everyone else, it'll look like there is no episode that week. And for the rest of you, we'll welcome you live to listen to our transitioning to winter episode on November the 24th. Now, Marlene, you've been doing some writing.
A little, yes. Yes, we had a very nice feature appear on Row 2K last week, which is a functional movement screening for masters rowers. And in this article, we reviewed some of the major movements that are really important for masters rowers to screen through, to check your range of motion, to look for certain qualities. This might be joint range of motion, it might be coordination, balance, finger motion, a strength motion. And so this is a screening that we put together. And I had done this. This is one of a talk that I usually like to do, but we put this together in a special format for Ed Hewitt at Row 2K, and it appeared last week as one of their features.
Yeah, so if you go to row2k.com/features, you'll find it. The link will be in the show notes. And this is a really great way for you to test for yourself how your body performs. And it's the sort of thing that can identify imbalances, which of course you can then work to rectify. Any imbalance isn't ideal, but we all know as masters that our bodies perhaps are not as robust as they once were. And once you know you have an imbalance or a weakness, then you can work to overcome it. So for myself, I have had surgery on one of my knees in the past, and I discovered that my right leg is significantly weaker than my left. But actually, it's not actually that much weaker. What was happening was my left leg was dominating when I was rowing. And that presented as really, really tight glutes and hamstrings on my left side because I was overworking them relative to my right side. So in fact, the cure was very straightforward for me. It was to mentally think about working my right leg and my right glute harder, being more dynamic with them. And actually, now the pain has completely gone in my left side because I'm being a bit more symmetrical.
Another thing there is to look at, I include a balance exercise, 1 or 2 balance and coordination exercises, because this is something that also can change as you age and changes how you row in the boat. So one leg standing balance with your hand over your head is very important, particularly in a case like this. If you've got some difference of strength in your leg or hip, you might find that it's more difficult to balance on one leg versus the other one. So the screening is basically for identification. It doesn't go into, okay, now how do we fix that? That's for later topics. But it does start to make you aware that, well, if my range of motion isn't good here, these are things that also talks about what does this affect technically in the boat. So
that's really important, because you might feel that you're endlessly working on something particular and you can't make it improve. And of course, that actually it's not so much that your hands aren't moving, it's actually that your body is not enabled to get into the right position. And this is a really big topic that we talk about quite a lot in Faster Masters, and that is how to get comfortable in the boat, how to set the boat up in terms of its rig and the internal organization of the cockpit where you sit, so that you are physically able to get into the correct position. And bear in mind, we have Faster Masters who range in age from 27 to over 80. There is a lot of range of physiques. There will be someone out there who is just like you. Nothing to do with age, more to do with your physiology. And we've got solutions. So if you find as a result of your functional movement screening that you've got a distinct challenge, let's raise it. Let's talk about it, and let's see what we can do to help you enjoy your rowing more and overcome these little limitations. Now, we got some podcast feedback. Marlene, who got in touch with you?
We received a comment from last week's podcast from one of our listeners, Roger Barrow. And Roger wrote to us, I tend to react to the rather blatant statement, you cannot coach yourself. I suspect you really aren't aware of the reality for certain parts of the masters rowing community. The podcast doesn't really address the issue, except pointing out quite rightly that a beginner cannot learn to row without a coach. However, any experienced rower knows that coaching is essential, but some of us have no choice but to coach ourselves because A, there are no clubs in our area, B, the clubs that exist offer no coaching above learn to row level, and C, our local or national rowing governing bodies seem to be completely aware that masters rowers exist and need coaching resources. I'm not convinced that remote coaching will have any value for me. What I really long for is a coach who will sit in a motorboat alongside me and tell me what I'm doing wrong. Even sending a video to a remote coach is not feasible for me, as I have nobody who can make such a video for me.
Well, Roger, we really feel your pain, and particularly your national federation apparently being unaware of the need for masters support and coaching. I know where you row, and I will go and get in touch with the National Federation, because I totally believe that that is needed. And it's if you're a member of the federation should be supporting you. But that's not a topic for today. So Marlene, let's see what we can do to help Roger in his particular situation. What was the first thing he mentioned?
He said, at first, I suspect you really aren't aware of the reality of certain parts of the masters rowing community. The podcast doesn't address the issue, except pointing out quite rightly that a beginner cannot learn to row without a coach. And I think dealing with, I've been working with masters rowers for a good portion of my life. And this is a very common thing. You know, many masters rowers who live on lakes get boats and want to start rowing. So it's actually very, very common. Certainly in the United States and Canada, a lot of people are not necessarily members of clubs, like I think is more more prevalent probably in Europe and in Australia and New Zealand, because I think in the United States and Canada, a lot of people do have boats where they live and they row. So they're learning, you know, they're living outside of the system where they row. So that is definitely something that you know, I've encountered a lot in my coaching career.
And of course, Marlene, one of the things about rowing on your own is you're unaware that other people are rowing on their own. I think that actually he is a great example of exactly that, and no particular reason to reach out to a local club, perhaps because there isn't one, as he says. And people like that find each other through the Masters Rowing International Facebook group. And actually, if we surveyed the group, I think we'd find there are a lot of people like you, but because you're on your own, you don't realize you're not the only one.
I think that's also one of the reasons why people love to go to camps, because when they go to, if they come to camps, say where people come from lots of different places, that's one of the reasons that such people really, I mean, I know rowers who are in Idaho and they row all by themselves, or in Wyoming. And when they come to a sculling camp, they have a ball because they get to meet lots of other rowers. This is how they network, because other than virtually, when you row somewhere by yourself, it's very difficult to network and to meet other people and find out what other people do.
That is so true.
Should I go to our the next comment? So yes, learning how to row without a coach is definitely difficult, but I guess you start somewhere and you try to get some instruction. But Roger goes on to write, any experienced rower knows that coaching is essential. We agree. But some of us have no choice but to coach ourselves because there are no clubs in our area. We've discussed that. The clubs that exist offer no coaching above the learn to row level. And that's unfortunate. If there is a club nearby, you would, even if it's not a program, is there somebody who would be willing to give a private lesson? And sometimes they don't advertise that, but sometimes there are people in the club who would be interested to give a private lesson. I don't know if that's available, but that's always something to ask if your club doesn't have really a formal program. Are there even some elite rowers training who might be interested to give feedback or go out in a single with you where they don't need a motorboat? So it's just, we're just trying to think of creative solutions here. We talked about the National Federation perhaps not offering things. What I thought was a good topic for us to talk about was, as Roger finishes, and he said, I'm not sure that remote coaching will have any value for me. What I really long for is a coach who will sit in a motorboat alongside me. And we all love, well, most of the time we love that, but yes, we all love that real interaction that has, it's a personal conversation. So, I myself, when I was training for years and years, I never had a coach who could be with me regularly. And I know that would have been wonderful. These days in elite rowing, that doesn't happen all that much, but years ago it did. But I do think remote coaching, from the point of view of getting video feedback, can be extremely helpful. And I think that I'm actually surprised how few people take advantage of video review services, because we have so many good programs out there where we can slow things down, where we can voice over, where we can draw on it, and where we can write, I write very detailed assessments for people who I do video reviews for. So it can at least start to say, what, does your rigging look right? Are you set up in the boat correctly? That you start there. Okay, now we can look at this, look at that. And so, you can have some dynamic back and forth to give you one or two priority things to work on. But I thought Roger brought up a good point, was he didn't really feel that he has a way for someone to video him. And that was one of the things we wanted to talk about, was like, okay, well, what are some of the ways to get some recording, right?
So as a tiny bit of feedback, I had a private conversation with Roger, and he did actually say, oh, there are some other rowers around. And I didn't really feel I could ask them because, they're doing their own thing and they're, training in a different way. And then when I said, well, can you just row past someone standing on the bank? And he said, oh, actually, yeah, there is a pier at the far end of the lake. It's a little shallow there, but yeah, I think I could. And, I could get a friend or a colleague to stand there and video me. And it was just interesting that by having the dialogue, we began to discover that actually the flat no instant response, because everyone presumes that videoing must come from a coach boat and a coach, is not necessarily what you can use. Most of our video analysis comes from people taking literally 3 or 4 strokes of video, really not very much. You row at a good pressure and row past the person with the camera. So the person with the camera gets usually at least 1 stroke where you're completely square off to the camera. And then obviously you're moving away or moving towards, and that is enough.
Yes, yes. I mean, these days when we can go frame by frame and really look at things, because you can see the rhythm, you can see the boat as people are moving in the video, but for the actual analysis, you don't need a lot. And some of the really creative things that I have seen is I've done some really interesting video reviews in the last few months from drone footage. And the drone footage is just incredibly beautiful. Plus, you can get an overhead shot, which is just precious. If you have a bridge that you can row under, that's also something you can ask somebody to stand on a bridge and row under it. That is such a informational view to get versus just from the stern or the side to get that overhead. So the drone footage is amazing. And I have one gentleman that I work with who rows on this reservoir in New York State. And he just goes up to the local fisherman and gives him his iPhone and asks him, anyone, even if he doesn't know them, he just asks them, will you record? Can I row by you a few times will you record me? So, you don't necessarily these days have to even know the person, but there are some creative solutions. And there's GoPro, a camera you can mount on the rigger or on the stern. That's another way to get some footage.
Yeah, and you can. There are all sorts of ways of doing it. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of creativity. Now we have some other feedback from someone in Australia who also responded when we asked for feedback. I'm just sending through some feedback. I was a club sweep rower in Australia through the 90s. I was competitive at this level, but never had the ability or inclination to try and row at a selection level. But I took up rowing again in my 40s, and had to learn to scull, as this seems to be the flavor of the month here. I'm now 51. I compete in masters events, and I haven't been that competitive. It's been more the social interaction for me, but I now would like to change that as I have more time to train, and I would like to row the Worlds in France in 2022. I first discovered Faster Masters when you, Rebecca, were based in the UK. I found the early information more suited to inexperienced masters, and I've also bought the 12-week 1K training program, which was good, but it didn't quite give me what I was looking for. I trialed the 1-month membership and I was sold. The testing that was included gave me what I was missing. The 20-minute erg trial to allocate splits is pretty much spot on with the heart rate work that I've been doing. And I've just signed up to the 12-month membership because of this. This has filled a gap that I have experienced at my club. They are all focused on 2K racing, and testing is based around this. It is simply a different race style to 1K, and no real knowledge on training masters or peri and menopausal women. If I try and get a program from the club, it tends to be from extremely fit men in their 50s who don't understand that I simply fatigue to the point that I cannot follow their program and still function through daily life. The workload based on the testing that you've provided has turned that around. Well, Tanya, that is fabulous feedback, and obviously very nice to hear that we're doing the right thing, and reassuring that different people, as we talked about, from 27 to over 80, can adapt the Faster Masters program to suit their personal physiology, which is what you intended, wasn't it, Marlene?
Well, yes, if you can customize for your indoor training, if you can customize your splits, you're always working at the right level, and that it's what it's designed for. It's designed to prevent undertraining and overtraining, because when you do your low intensity, you must do it low enough. And when you do your high intensity, you must do it high enough. And the in-between zone should be very limited. And you might have some combination workouts from now and then, but but in general, you want to be precise that when you've got to do your quality, that you're doing it hard enough or fast enough. Otherwise, the point is you're not getting the result the physiologically effect that you think that you're getting. The other thing is most people row their low intensity rows too hard. This is a great topic for another podcast, but this is the most common training error that I see among masters rowers. And
we will talk about that another day.
Yes.
We've got a few more people watching live. Here is Valerie from Ottawa.
Oh, nice.
Aloha. I thought aloha was what they said in Hawaii.
Maybe she just came back from Hawaii.
She has a great tan. I can see that. And Jeanette is joined us.
Great. You found us early. We're early today, Jeanette.
That's right. And hello from Philly. I'm not quite sure who that is, but hello. Very nice to have you all with us. Remember, you can ask questions live or put comments and remarks underneath the live stream if you're watching. Philadelphia, I'm the house.
I'm the house.
Do you mean in the house? I don't know. I'm not very good at rap.
Explain to us.
I was thinking of Ali G, which was one of Sacha Baron Cohen's previous pre-Borat incarnations. It was always called Ali G in the house.
Oh, God. Oh, Andres, he's a faster masters of ours. Yes.
Hi, Andres. Nice to see you. So this leads on very neatly to our big topic for today, which is exercising versus training. Marlene, what made you think this was something we needed to talk about? It's not just doing your low intensity workouts. No.
Actually, usually it's the other way around. But this has just been a topic that I've discussed with some athletes this week. So when these things are fresh in my mind, I like to bring them up. And in this particular instance, there's a group of athletes that I work with who are in more of an erg group. They do row on the water together. So some of them are, on water scullers, but the group itself kind of is more focused on training together on the ergs. So there are some athletes in the group who are a little bit more CrossFit oriented than perhaps oriented to rowing training on the water. So just the discussion came up about keeping things interesting, more high intensity, more types of challenges, right? In a training in the program. Okay, so this just gets me thinking about, well, what's the difference? There is a difference between exercising, and you can exercise pretty hard and pretty seriously, versus training. And the way that I look at this is you can still exercise very hard, but your exercising isn't necessarily working to achieve a certain goal, say, versus training for a 1K race or a 5K race, where you have some objective in mind. Now, maybe you're racing, and let's even say it could be just your personal time trial. Maybe you never even go to a race, but you're looking to improve the race, how you row it. You're looking for a performance element. And in a training program is designed in that the weekly cycle of the workouts coordinate with each other so that they put in stresses and they allow recovery, and they use different systems physiologically depending on what phase of training you're in and what you're developing. And so and for me in a training program, anytime I have somebody do some sort of a test or trial or set stroke rate piece, I want to get information from that piece to know, are they making progress in the right direction? Do we need to tweak things? Are things, are we just keeping things in a positive direction towards what we're working towards? And for me, that's the difference between trying to, And you still have to keep training interesting. I definitely agree with that. And sometimes people have a hard time repeating workouts. So there is this entertainment factor sometimes where someone's like, oh, I've already done that workout.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you need to do it again, and you need to do it again, and you need to do it again. Do you think elite athletes do the workout once and then they never go back and do the same workout again? They repeat them over and over and over again. And the reason for that, not, in combination, you still need to have, you can still build in a lot of variety, but it's important to develop your skill at certain things, develop your technique at low intensity, develop your ability. Maybe you're doing 5 times 5 minutes at race pace, develop your ability to do that. So that, that's a workout like rowers do all their life, right? It's a really common workout. We start it in high school and you're still doing it when you're a master's, and but you see the differences, because when I went back to training in my second elite career, when I was in my 30s, when I first started to do that workout, I could only get my heart rate up to like 175, right? Or 178. As over the next 5 years, as I got into better and better shape, by the time I retired from full-time training, I could get my heart rate up to 194. Wow. For the 5 times 5 minutes. So, this is the difference, is that you're doing this workout, but your body is changing and it's developing, and you need to come back to things and repeat them so that you learn how to do the session, and then you improve on the session. So to me, that's the difference about in a training program versus exercising, where, you still want to keep it interesting, but there's no definite coordinated way of how you're putting your days or weeks or months together.
I also think part of the reason that people think that repeating a session is boring is they haven't kept a record in a training diary of how they did. Even if your record, if you're an erg trainer, is a photograph of the screen at the end of the session, it's really helpful. And definitely I concur on familiarity enables you to perform better. And it also allows you to monitor how you're feeling. So we had a peak race at the weekend, and we had an outing this morning, and one of my colleagues in the crew said, I came down yesterday and I was terrible. She said it was a bit rough. So I went on the erg and I was like at half pressure. I was like, well, that's interesting, because it's telling you something, and you learn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're tired today. Gee.
What are you going to do about it?
Right. But I understand this. I mean, the other thing is too, is, I'm a little bit of a volume person. I like low volume. I like the physiological benefits. I'm a great follower of Dr. Steven Seiler, if people are familiar with his work. And I've always trained that way too, because I actually had a lot of Eastern European coaches and also came from a Nordic ski background, and that's a fundament of it. But in rowing, that's when you do your technique training. You're getting all these other physiological things going on, which we'll talk about in another podcast. But, that's when you do your technique training. That's when you do your concentration training, your focus training. If you can't focus in training, how are you going to focus in a race? So I think providing the interest also comes from what are you working on technically and keeping it engaging. And, we don't try to bore people with boring workouts. I never think any workout is boring, because there's always something to work on. After 43 years of rowing, I'm still finding things to work on. So
here's something. If you are faced with doing a long time duration workout, here's something that you can do to combine your personal technical focus with executing the workout. Set a timer, maybe every 2 minutes. You agree that at 2 minutes, you're going to have a technical focus, and whatever the thing is you are working on, it doesn't matter what it is, it's what you are working on. Take 10 strokes at that 2 minute point to focus on your technique. So that's the first 10 strokes. The second 10 strokes, you're going to stop thinking about that technical point and row another 10 strokes. It doesn't have to be precisely 10, but you need to row on some, clearing your brain, not thinking about anything. And then after that, you can then re-engage your brain to focus on that technical point and observe yourself as if you were a scientist in a lab, looking just with observational clarity. How am I rowing with regard to that one technical point? Am I doing it the way I want, or am I not quite getting it right? And depending on whether it's one or the other, either make a change or don't make a change. But what you're training in that method of thinking about it for 10 and then not thinking about it for 10 and then observing is you're learning to make your conscious movement then an unconscious movement, because you need to be able to do that technique when you're not thinking about it, because obviously there are other things to think about, and that helps to train you to embed that technical change into your regular rowing stroke. So there you go. There's your one tip for this week. Unconscious training.
Yeah, well, they say, you know, train consciously, race subconsciously, and then unconsciously, right? I mean, the farther you get into the race, the less oxygen you have in your brain. So your race plan's got to get simpler and simpler.
That is so true. Who do we know who's a cartoonist who can draw that one for us?
Oh, we've got to have somebody out there in the Faster Masters community.
Oh, I have another live watcher from New Brunswick, Canada. Hello.
Yeah, great. We have a lot of Canadians today. Nice to see everyone.
Do you consider yourself an honorary Canadian since you live there?
Well, I'm a permanent resident of Canada, so I actually grew up on the border. Half of my family on the Canadian side, the other half on the American side. So I was going back and forth. I was always going back and forth all my life. So I'm both.
Borders are meaningless to Marlene. It's official. Guys, I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you to everybody who sent us feedback when we asked for it. And I hope that we've persuaded you that you do need a coach. You can't coach yourself. But also look seriously at videoing. Videoing is a really, really helpful part of your own personal improvement.
Oh, it's a Richard Webster. Wonderful.
I did a single scull today with snow all around. Oh, Richard.
Well, you see my picture behind Rebecca. That's my car this morning. You can see my, this is my single this morning, Richard.
Yeah, it's impressive. I haven't seen that amount of snow in quite a few years.
Well, but I will be rowing this weekend because it's going to be up to 14 and 15 degrees centigrade. So I'm not done rowing yet.
Excellent. Excellent. So this has been part of Faster Masters Rowing Radio, the show dedicated to masters athletes who want fun, fitness, and confidence in their rowing. You can become a student of the sport by buying a Faster Masters program subscription today at fastermastersrowing.com/join. And from Marlene and myself, join our newsletter and please share this episode around your friends and your rowing club. We would love to have some new listeners, because of course that's what the November the 24th episode is all about. Only people who are on the newsletter. A final comment. Will you talk about testing for movement another session? Yes, I'm sure we can.
Yes. But also do go to Row 2K, and the assessment is en route, published on Row 2K in the features, row2k.com.
Absolutely. And I will put, here's the link.
Yeah, because that does have what the testing is for the movement screening.
Yeah, so you can test yourself, and that will give you, it basically tells you exactly how to do it. You don't need us to tell you how to do it. All right, so there you go. So no, we're not going to talk about it in another session. We already talked about it.
We might talk about how to improve things. That's one topic at a time, right? You can't wear us out all at once.
But we love getting suggestions, so keep them coming. Till next time. Bye-bye.